Hi, everybody, and welcome to another podcast for the Thriving LDS Singles. We're so happy to have you here. So I'm Kay and Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
Today we're going to talk about communication. And this is part of our series on healthy relationships, because we feel that even though we're single, obviously we've still got plenty of relationships. And for many, we're looking for that one relationship. And so the more we learn and grow in the fields of communication, the better.
Yeah.
So, Kim, what do you think?
Well, I've been doing a little bit of research on it, and I guess I should preface our conversation with that because we are, I don't know about UK, but I am in no means trying to portray that I am an astounding communicator. I'm learning like all the rest of you, and
I've still got things to learn too. But yeah, we've improved as we've grown.
Yeah, we certainly have learned some things and are trying to practice the things that we learned from each other and from the coaching and from our education and all of our backgrounds. So. And hopefully we're getting better, right? Not worse, is that it?
That's the plan.
We'll have to ask our friends and family to chime in and let us know. How are we on communication? Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be a little bit scary? Okay. But anyway, you're right in that communication, it's kind of the crux of all relationships. And I was just telling you before we started to record that there was a burial talk by Elder Kendrick. And I'll put it in the notes in our Facebook group, but as I'll give you the link so you can find it. But it's just a straightforward talk about having Christ-like communication and what is not Christ-like communication. But what I really liked about it was that he likens things all the way back to Adam and Eve. And when you think about it, communication was an issue from the very beginning. That's what got us into this mess.
So it's really just part of the human experience, huh?
Yeah, it really is. So he mentions a few non-Christ-like communication traits like lying, for example. And of course, he uses the whole Adam and Eve and Satan as our example. Lucifer, he was not Satan then, he was Lucifer, as the example of telling the first lie ever to be told. And what's interesting about that lie is, well, it did a few things. It was kind of a half-truth, right? So he was very, very deceptive. He was sort of telling the truth. And how often do we catch ourselves doing that? Or we call it a white lie of some kind, or some lies are better than other lies. And
I think being aware that that's one of Satan's biggest tools is that half-truth. He's very good at that. And so, that he told them that you'll be like the gods and you'll be able to die and know good from evil. And that was 100% true. That was, So it was, he will tell that to us now too. It's like, oh, well, you've got to do this because that's the way it works. So you've got to hear the rest of the story.
Yeah, it's very deceiving. And then also he planted seeds of doubt, which is the other thing, right? Because he asked a question. He was very cunning in the way he presented that and making Eve think, oh, did I mishear God? Or did I not interpret what was said correctly? Or he started to make her doubt herself. And so that's another.
And we see that everywhere, don't we?
Yeah.
We see that everywhere in the church, probably out of the church too, but in the church we see people like, but maybe it's not true because like that doesn't, And so that is a big one that's being used at the moment.
Yeah.
So Satan has changed, huh?
Yeah. And I am kind of sensitive to lying because I was told a lie until I was 13 and found out that my dad wasn't really my biological father. And there's all kinds of reasons why a lie like that might have been told. But of course, to me, the answer was, well, we were protecting you because we wanted everyone to love you like normal or like you were part of the family or whatever the answer is. But I think we can easily get caught in thinking, oh, I have to be deceptive in order to protect somebody's feelings, or to, we think we're doing the righteous thing when we're saying some kind of a lie. And that's just not the case. I mean, whenever we're lying, it's a formula for things to go awry. So
I think that's it, isn't it? It's that at some time the truth will come out, and I imagine that's what happened with you. You sit there and go, well, what else did you lie about? What else is the truth? What else is real?
that's exactly right. It makes you really question that, now I can't trust people. It really complicated my feelings of even who I could trust and why I trust them. So yeah, really.
My first son we adopted, and one of the things the judge said to us, the promise we had to make to the court, was that he would always know that, because that's what they've discovered in adoptions, is that it always comes out, and you might as well tell the truth right from the beginning. It's a good story, really, isn't it? I mean, loved you enough that we wanted you as part of our family. It's you have to make it a bad thing, but it was interesting that's where the adoption laws have gone, is that now you need to tell them the truth from the beginning, and especially now with DNA, everybody would find out anyway. So it seems like lies always get found out. So no matter how bad it feels, tell the truth.
Yeah. And this goes back to what we were talking about in the previous episode on relationships, is you can have candid conversations about hard things, but you have to have them in an environment of being emotionally safe, a loving, emotionally safe environment. And when you create those kind of environments, which is what Christ did, his love was never in question. So when you create a loving environment like that, an emotionally safe environment, you can have hard conversations. And we really don't do ourselves any favors by thinking that we're protecting somebody. And really what that is taking their agency away, because we're taking their choice of how they react, because we're fearful maybe of their reaction or what might happen, or of other people's reaction. And so we're really manipulating the system and taking away their ability to potentially grow or react. We always assume the worst, maybe. I wouldn't say always, but that's kind of where those things are born out of.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me of that. We were just talking about shame, and we're going to have a future episode about shame, which is going to be great, because shame is actually one of the really big damaging emotions. And so if you're hiding things and lying because of shame, then you actually need to look at the shame, like that, to heal that part of you, because it's, people will forgive pretty well everything.
Yeah.
But you've got to forgive yourself. And so often we're lying because we're trying to hide something from others, because we're ashamed. Whereas, others will accept it quite well if we do it, as you said, with love.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So you could easily have been told that you had a different father, but we love you just as you are. Like, wouldn't that have been?
Yeah, isn't that? And it's so fascinating to think about how that would have changed the trajectory of even my identity, and how I belonged or didn't belong, because I lost my sense of belonging when I found that out. So it really shook things up for me. So the next one is,
the summary there is, don't lie about anything ever to anybody.
Yeah, and don't lie to yourself, even to yourself. We lie to ourselves a lot, and so the more we can tune in and be open and honest, the healthier we will be, and the healthier others around us will be. And if they can't, that old it always comes out in the movies, if they can't handle the truth, whatever movie that's from, then that's their responsibility to take care of. And we can't protect people from those kinds of things. That's not our job. That's not doing them any favors. It's cheating them out of an opportunity for growth and development. So, but we tell lies just to make our lives easier, so to speak, right?
That's right. We think it's going to be easier. We think that it'll stop the conflict, but it's just creating a conflict further down the road when it comes out. Because, in every movie you've ever watched, the lie always comes out.
That's true. It's what makes a fascinating book or a good soap opera, right? Is waiting for the lie to finally be told. Did I lose you, Kay? Hey, you're frozen.
Yeah, I think my internet.
But,
yeah,
okay.
That was. Anyway, yes.
So back to lying, because we were talking about creating a safe environment. Another thing that happens, I think, if we're not communicating effectively is avoiding, right? Or not saying something. And that's a form of lying where we think that if we just don't say anything or we just avoid it, it'll go away. And in crucial conversations, yeah, and that Crucial Conversations book that I've referenced, and I can put some more information on that in the Facebook group too. That's one of the things that gets pointed out is we think we have a decision to make of keep a friend or tell the truth. And that really isn't the choice, keep a friend or tell the truth. Because what happens is if we don't say anything, we act it out in other ways. Like it'll come out. If we avoid the conversation, our behavior somehow is going to reflect that, whether it's a simple eye roll, which I am the queen of. I
love that. That it was at a podcast you sent me about the talk where the person, his child did the experiment with the chocolate cake.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, the author of the book, Crucial Conversations, was talking about an experiment that his son did for a science fair project. Because they wanted to know if even children have learned this behavior of it's better not to tell them the truth. And so they made a cake with salt. I think it was brownies. They made brownies with salt instead of sugar. And they had young children, like in grade school age, taste this cake and talk about how they liked it or not. And all of the kids in the experiments didn't say, oh, that tastes terrible. They didn't want to say the truth. So
even though the facial expressions were like, ooh.
Yeah. And the true test was when he came back and he said, would you like some more? And nobody wanted more. So
yes, it was sad to hear that quite young. And he said one of the girls was only like 5 or very young, and she still didn't.
Yeah,
still didn't want to tell him it tastes
good or something. We're patterning that behavior where we're not supposed to tell the truth.
Yeah. Whereas it was a fairly, think a fairly safe environment to say that cake tastes awful.
Yeah. So back to, we have to find ways to be effective communicators and create that environment or that place of emotional safety where we can say, hey, we really care about you, but that cake has salt in it. That cake's too salty. Don't take it personally, though. And I think that's what we're always afraid of, right? Is that they're going to take it personally. So,
well, yeah, the backlash. The backlash, the how they're going to respond. So we stay away and think, no, it's better to not, because we don't want people criticizing us or being angry with us or hurting us in any way. So it's like, if I just don't say anything, then maybe it'll just go away.
Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't go away usually, like unless the person, if you're running into the person often, it just doesn't go away. But so hard to have those hard conversations.
Yeah, because we're trying to keep ourselves comfortable as well. And sometimes we have to be willing to be uncomfortable and find some ways to work our way through hard conversations. So
it's a tough one, Kim.
I know. I think it does require some training of ourselves and always inviting God into that scenario where you feel God's comfort and love for you, and also the love and comfort for the other person as well. I would say probably one of the most important things to do, but
that's a good key. Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
All
And
right.
just so then the other unhealthy communication, back to the Adam and Eve story, is the blaming someone else, right? Because we saw plenty of that in that very first story, which when God
You
asked
did
Adam,
it.
what did he do? He threw poor Eve under the bus. It was all Eve's fault.
Woman, she made me do it.
Yeah. And then Eve said it was Lucifer's fault. He made me do it.
You
So,
made me do it.
yeah. So blaming is another, when we blame somebody, we're actually making ourselves a poor innocent victim. And we're vilifying somebody else. Like, he was the mean monster, the villain that coerced me into this, and I was just the innocent victim. So that's a really unhealthy pattern in communicating and in relationships in general. You know, if we're villainizing somebody else and creating that kind of victim mentality of, oh, it was the other person didn't communicate right, or didn't treat me well, or wasn't showing me respect, which, you know, whether it's true or not, we have to take ownership for how we respond to it. And that requires us to be really healthy within ourselves.
Accepting responsibility for our actions in every situation. So no one's made you do anything. And no matter whatever pressure was put on you, you still didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's very important to see that part of every relationship, because in every relationship, when things go wrong, you will have a part of it. There will be a part that you played in that. And we see it not just in relationships, but in all sorts of interactions just in the world. And, you know, like the government made me do it. You know, my job made me do it. It's like, no, that's all your choice. And because agency is what the whole of life is about, how we're going to choose to use our agency.
Yeah,
And
the culture, the family culture, or the church, our ward culture. I just would never dare to speak up in that culture. Or, you know, we're blaming something where it's easy to blame or make somebody else the villain.
yeah. It's like, no, take responsibility for your own actions, despite what anybody else is. I mean, other people do behave badly around you. That's fine. I understand that. But doesn't mean that you can't take the part of your blame, and don't just say the woman made me do it.
Yeah. And then the next thing is criticizing. So that's, of course, another unhealthy communication style. And that kind of goes back to the blaming or making somebody else a villain. Really what we're doing is criticizing either the culture, or the government, or a person, or somehow criticizing somebody else for, and not taking accountability for our part in something.
Our part of it. And isn't that what in that the Gottman's research about relationships, the four horsemen of the apocalypse?
Yeah.
And criticizing is sort of number one. It's like,
it is number one.
And in those, intimate relationships, it is a killer.
Yeah. It's one of the number one predictors of divorce, is focus on criticizing. So yeah, absolutely. And so how would we switch that around? So if you're in a situation where there's something that you want to give some feedback to somebody about, you'd like a behavior to change, then how do you do that without criticizing them or saying, oh, it really bothers me when you do this? Go ahead.
Trick, isn't it? It's real, because even like that's that's what we're being taught, isn't it, as counselors, psychologists, is like, well, look, I get really hurt when you do that. So it's like taking the responsibility for your feelings, but often that is still heard as criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Setting the conversations up of like, I've got this really important thing I need to talk to you about.
Mm-hmm.
Set it up so that they can hear it rather than, you didn't clean the kitchen again.
Yeah.
You know? And even if you word it like, I'm so frustrated when you don't clean the kitchen properly.
Yes, you wouldn't say that because you're still creating an environment where they'd be defending, making them defensive. But it's more, it's really hard for me to have clutter around in the kitchen. I don't feel comfortable, and it makes me feel uneasy. Is there something we could do, or some way we could work on this to figure out a solution? Because and you're right. You know what, the two things that as you were talking, it made me think of. One is, I think we have to slow down in our communication, like really take a step back and not rush into conversations, really be thoughtful and slow down. Just start to collect data and monitor what's going on for us, because the second we start to feel like our blood pressure go up, or we're starting to feel uneasy, as soon as we start getting those signals inside us of a feeling or a bodily sensation of some kind, then that's a clue to wait, take a step back, calm down our nervous system, and start thinking.
No conversation will ever work while those feelings are stirred around inside of you. It's just guaranteed not to work.
Yeah.
So it's not the time to have those conversations. And when you step back and go, what is going on here? Why am I so upset? It's probable that you'll find that actually you don't need the conversation in some of those little areas that we're talking about here, the housework stuff and things. It's like, my daughter-in-law is a bad housekeeper. That's just the fact. But she's brilliant with her children. She's brilliant with her work. She's brilliant with everything else. And my son has just come to that. He's like, housework's not her thing. She doesn't see it. He said, but dishes in the sink are.
See, so, and that's that actually, it plays into some of the Gottman things, and we'll talk more about that too in romantic relationships. But I think the percentage is really high, like 67% of those little things like that are just things that will never be solved. Like they're either really messy and you like it clean, or and so 67% of things are not going to be resolved by talking through them, trying to work out solutions. You just have to get to a place of acceptance in those areas. And if that's not an option, then it's probably not going to be a relationship that works, because that percentage is really high of things that are just not going to be resolved.
So they resolved that by hiring a housekeeper.
Yeah. That's actually how I resolve that. Come to think of it.
You don't want to do it.
But then I just lived for every other Thursday when I came home from work.
It's one of the best solutions for solving that housework dilemma.
Yeah, the other thing about that when you were talking was, you really have to keep in mind what's most important. As soon as your brain switches to, I'm going to win, or I'm going to convince the other person of my way of thinking, or, that kind of thinking will get you nowhere. You have to find common ground, or what is the thing that both of us want. And obviously in an intimate relationship, you want the relationship, right? That's the most important thing. But, finding that common ground, and then always keeping that in mind and keeping that perspective, so that it doesn't turn into a thing about winning. And I can't remember where I heard this, but it might have been actually when I was listening to the audiobook of Crucial Conversations. But we've all had that time where the two little kids run in, and one of them wants to, use the bathroom first, and you only have one. And because they have to go, they are have been waiting the longest, and if they don't go, they're going to have an accident, and they can fight there for 30 minutes about who gets in there first, when in reality, if they would have kept in mind the goal of we both got to go to the bathroom, they would have had the problem solved in a couple minutes. And but yeah, they can argue about it for 30 minutes about who gets in there first, right? So we've all had those situations. So creating that, finding that common ground or that common goal is really essential. And then functioning from that place, like what's the most important thing that we both want out of this. And maybe there's relationships where I was thinking about this. I was thinking about, especially when it comes to dating, sometimes we meet a person and we decide that there isn't that spark. Then the question becomes, do I want to maintain this relationship or keep this friendship? Or do I just avoid having the hard conversation? Or how important, I guess, is this relationship to me? And so we run into that, especially when we're going through and dating and meeting lots of people. And I was thinking about that and thinking about, like, what would Christ's perspective be? You know, he's always talking about ministering to the one. And I think it's a great place to practice healthy relationship and communication patterns and not dismiss people, you know, or say, well, maybe this relationship isn't that important, so I'm going to avoid the hard conversation, or I'm just going to ghost this person or not talk to them or whatever, because what I'm doing over here is more important, or the most important thing right now. And I think it would be, you know, I guess, at least for me personally, I would like to think, I'm going to try and think about it from a perspective of, let's minister to the one and give that person enough love and respect that they're worthy of at least a candid conversation, or not just dismissing them or avoiding a conversation. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, every person obviously is a child of God and deserves our respect and care and consideration. On the other hand, you were talking about it being the dating relationships, depending on how many people you choose to date. Not everybody can, you haven't got enough room in your life for everybody to stay your friends. So one of the hard conversations is going to be like, I don't think this is working. Like it's,
or we don't have enough in common, or what.
So you know, like, everybody deserves the respect. And so ghosting, yes, would be like, they'll be going, what did I do wrong? What happened?
Yeah.
So it's a hard one. I haven't actually had to face that one, Kim, but not a lot of men around me to date. But I think it is important to say, look, I don't think this is working, but we need to go date other people. And that might be a hard thing to say to someone who seems to be really keen on you.
Right.
But if that's what you've felt, I think it's important to let them go.
Yeah. And if you can't have that conversation now, that's just a good indicator that it's not going to be a healthy relationship anyway, you know, because you're already setting yourself up to not have an honest, healthy conversation.
Yeah. And that's certainly, if there's things in a dating relationship where you are getting uncomfortable, say so. Because, if you're looking at this relationship to take it further, you need to know how the person reacts to that conversation, because, you don't want to go into a marriage not having said that. Exactly. And seeing how they react to that. So that's really important. And that's that, I think we're talking about anger. You know, how do people respond when things don't go their way?
Yeah, we were, and
things won't go our way in life. That's I can guarantee this for you. Not every life is going to go your way.
That's so true.
So important to see how people respond to that, how they respond to you saying, I'm not comfortable with that. How are they going to respond?
Or even, I think a harder thing, at least for me, would be if I'm just, I hate to say bored, but, you know, we're just not connecting from a conversation perspective, or I don't have the same interests or whatever it might be, because that's not anything wrong with the other person. It just means we don't have there's not enough there for a connection. And so I think that would be probably a harder conversation for me than if I was truly feeling uncomfortable with something somebody said or disagreeing with something somebody said, but just not, just being bored, right?
I would hope the other person was, what's the word, mature enough to see if they're boring someone. Self-aware enough.
Yeah.
If they're not self-aware enough to say that, to read your boredom, then yeah.
Yeah, or you just run out of things to talk about. That should be a good indicator that maybe we just aren't. Aren't a good.
There would be some red flags for me. I'm just like, I'm not sure. But I think, to be able to then say nicely to them, like, we're not connecting. Obviously, it's just the chemistry between us. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with me or you.
Yeah.
But let's go date some different people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a nice way of all those things we were just saying. Don't lie, don't blame, don't criticize. Just be very gently loving. Say bye.
I read a book, it wasn't too long ago, months ago, called Radical Honesty. And I would not recommend it. It has a lot of swear words and a lot of liberal thinking in it. But it also had some really interesting points about being honest and being upfront and expressing how you're really feeling. Back to that thing we were talking about in the previous episode about intimate connection and really expressing what's going on for you in the present moment. And that's really what it was focused on, was being radically honest in those settings. Because we do get caught in playing a lot of games, like, really caring about somebody and not telling them that we really care about them because we don't know if it'll push them away or how they'll react or all those things. So there is some value in just being radically honest and then expecting the other person to be able to be emotionally mature enough to be able to handle whatever it is you're sharing. And some people may or may not be able to handle it, right?
That's right. I think the important person to be radically honest with is yourself. Like that's
right.
To be aware of when there's an uncomfortable feeling, whether it's, sadness, anger, shame, just whatever.
Yeah.
To like stop and hear what that feeling is and see if you can unravel it. Because something's triggered it. So find out the trigger. And then one of the things that we often do is like, oh, I don't like those feelings. I don't want to be angry. So you just cover it up and just try and get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in actual fact, the healing comes from sitting in the feeling. Sit there and be angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be angry at someone else. Don't tell, don't
acknowledge your anger and explore it.
Explore it. And when you feel like punching something, by all means, go and get that anger out and feel it before you interact with anybody else.
Yeah. If we were not meant to feel angry, I don't think God would have given us that emotion. So clearly that's not the answer. But it is a good warning signal that we need to be able to recognize it in ourselves and work our way through it.
Work our way through it, because it will be coming down to things like they shouldn't have said that, they did this wrong, they did that wrong.
That blaming thing, huh?
Yeah, that blaming thing.
Innocent
so pull all that out and really, how dare they do that to me? Whatever it is, experience it, feel it, and be clear about what it is, so that when you've taken the anger out of your system, you're then able to sit down and go, okay, yes, I do need a conversation with that person, but I've got to do it when the anger's gone. If you just try and put it down, a great analogy is a soft drink bottle. What do you call them? Pop bottles? Yeah, pop. So if you've got a bottle and it's fairly full and you shake it and you take the lid off it, we all know what happens. It goes all over the place.
Right.
Right? And that's like your anger. If you're full of anger, even if you've got the lid on it at the moment, as soon as somebody takes the lid off, it will explode.
It's going to blow.
Whereas if we take...
That's true of resentment too, stuffing down your resentment, right?
Yes.
It'll eventually turn to anger.
All those emotions that we're stuffing down. Whereas if we work through it by ourselves, we empty the bottle, and only we see that happening with things like road rage. You think, boy, all I did was didn't put my blinker on soon enough. Like, come on, guys, it wasn't that big a deal. But the rage that comes to you is coming because their bottle's full. Their pop bottle's full. And so that one little thing, it made it explode.
Yeah.
And so really we see that around us all over the place, where this anger's just waiting to explode. And we need to deal with that ourselves and make sure that any conversation, any interactions in our daily lives, that we've emptied that anger bottle.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and then strengthen our muscle for emotional tolerance, right? Because somebody cutting you off in traffic is not worth being angry over.
We have all done it, and we've all had people do it to us. It's just part of life. And so, it's not worth getting angry about. So if you feel anger arising at small situations, then I would say that your bottle's full. Do the anger work to go through it and get those emotions, because emotions that are, even if we think we've dealt with it, but all we've done is push them down, they will show.
Yeah, and as you said, as you work your way through some of that stuff, you'll realize, probably after I've worked my way through that, whatever story I was telling myself about why so and so was doing whatever they were doing, and I'm mad about it. By the time you get through questioning your story that you made up in your head about the whole thing, you realize, it's not worth really even having a conversation about, because it's not a big deal.
Not worth the conversation.
That's why slowing down is.
So many times it's not what the person just did. It's the 50 things that have happened in your life that you've tried to just push away. Yeah. And it's those things that are actually the issue, not what someone just did. Yeah.
So the more we work through that stuff and deal with it at the moment that it comes up, the healthier we become, and the more equipped, the more tolerant we become, and the more emotional resilience we have in working with and communicating with other people, for sure.
And that's a really important part. If we want healthy communication, we need to be healthy. We need to have that healthy belief about ourselves, so that we can then have these healthy communications.
Circles all the way back to healing ourselves first.
Healing ourselves. Who knew?
That, and work and connecting. I always say, whenever I say healing with myself, I always include God in that formula, because I think he's a big part of that. But having that good, strong, foundational relationship. And I think that's probably a good note to maybe end this conversation on, because really our goal is to have Christ-like communication. And we often make the mistake of thinking turn the other cheek means to avoid or not have the conversation. And that's not at all what the message Christ was sending us, or even acting out for us, was, because he did have the hard conversations, and he did give us the hard news along with the good news. But it's all about how we deliver it and what our focus is in having a loving intent always in what we're communicating.
Yeah, exactly. He was a very good communicator.
Yeah.
Christ-like example, surprise. But yes, like looking at the way he dealt with those hard conversations is brilliant. He told people to stop doing things. He told people they were on the wrong track. Yeah. But he did it in a way that helped people feel like they could change.
Yeah.
So it's important for all our conversations, Kim.
It is. And we'll keep working at it, keep trying, and give each other grace, because we make mistakes.
It was lovely chatting with you today, Kim. And we'll look forward to further episodes.
Yes. Talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.